We're going to create a quick floor plan so that we can use it to look at different ceiling layouts. Here in the level 1 plan, you can start the wall tool and change your height to level 2. And over here I'll just go ahead and click on rectangle, pick a point, pull my mouse across and pick another point. And I just use the generic 8-inch basic wall. So if you wanted to change it, you can just rest your pointer on one of the walls that are touching each other. Use the tab key to highlight those walls and then click and see that they are the basic generic 8-inch. We can change those to this brick on metal stud. And by doing that, at first you won't see the material within the wall, those layers, until at the bottom left corner you change your detail level here from coarse to a little bit finer, either medium or fine. I changed it to fine so that you can actually see the layers and the composite of those walls. Now if you start the wall tool again, you can change here the wall to an interior wall. 4 7/8 is good. We can here click, pull your mouse across and click. And then because I had a check mark in chain, it's still on this chain of walls. I can escape out of that once and then take the check mark out of chain so that you can place here several walls. Let's see, we'll place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. Right now we're not too concerned about the spacing because we'll use dimensions and some of the tools to equal these spaces out. We could go ahead and start the grid tool and place a grid. I'm going to go ahead, as long as I have this grid lines lined up from top to bottom, you can kind of see that dashed line that represents the grid line. Then we'll know that these are lining up with each other at least. Here we go. And now we'll change by clicking in these grid bubbles the numbers to letters on the left side here. We'll change it to A and B. If we want to lock the grid to our walls, we can go to the Modify tab and use Align. Align is a great tool to know about. You can select here the grid 1 and pick the outside wall, and you see how it kind of aligns itself with that wall. And now we can click the lock icon, which will lock it into place. Over here I'm going to select this grid and this wall and lock it. Same with these 4 here walls. Okay, you can either click on Modify here at the top left, or you can use the Escape key. And now if I go to the Annotate tab, I can use the Aligned dimension to click here on grid 1 and 2, and then grid 3, and click in space here to place it, and then pick this EQ so that we can have equal spacing between these two. I'm using my Escape key, but you can also use the Modify tab button here, or some people will right click and pick Cancel a few times. We'll go back to Aligned and place a dimension across from here grid 1 to grid 3. Okay, we can now select grid 3 and click on here this dimension and type in 101 We don't need the feet because Revit automatically here turns it to feet. And now we have a longer plan. We can do the same thing over here. We can place an aligned dimension from here to here, and then select the grid B, click on the dimension, and type in 68. Now, as a choice, you can click on this wall and select the dimension that's called temporary dimension. Right now, you'll see that they're called witness lines, are within the centers of the walls. If you continue to click on this circle, you'll be able to change the location from center to inside and interior and exterior surface. But for now, I'm going to click here on the number and make this 22 feet. If you wanted to make it a permanent dimension, you could here click on this little small dimension icon, and it makes it a permanent dimension. Okay. If we click right on the dimension, we can then lock that one also, locking in this distance. Now we're ready to go to align and place here a dimension that will make these spaces somewhat equal. I say that because the last one is in the middle of this exterior wall. And then pick EQ. There we go. Go to the Architecture tab, click on Door, and here you can use your space bar to flip the door swing before you place it. But even after you click to place it, as we saw in the other first video, you can use these arrows to modify the swing and the door location. Also, we're not creating schedules in this video. We can click on this tag, this number 1 tag for the door. If you right click and go to hide in view, you can pick category. And what it does is it just hides that category, but later if you type in VG, it will be here in the annotation tab under door tags. That's why there's a check mark that's not in door tags. This dialog box will help you to turn on and off different elements within this view. Okay, so now we're ready to mirror this door. We can select it and click here on Mirror Pick an Axis. There's also Mirror Draw an Axis if you don't have one or an object to select. So I'll go ahead and pick Mirror Pick Axis and then pick this center axis right here. And notice that in the options bar there was a check mark on copy. So if you wanted to make a copy of it, you could put that check mark in there. Okay, and now I want to here copy these. You'll hold your control key down so that you can select both of these doors and then pick copy here in the modify panel. I'm going to select the center of this wall, and then I can come over here and copy to the middle of this wall and continue copying over here to the middle of this wall. Awesome. So let's take a look at some of the basics of ceilings, and then we'll transition into a couple of design features we can use. So over in the ceiling plans, let's take a look here at level 1. We're looking up at the ceiling. You can go up to here in the Architecture tab, Ceiling, and now at first you'll see that we have two different ways of placing a ceiling. The automatic ceiling, which will automatically find the boundary for you, and you can establish here in the type selector what type of ceiling that you want based on a 2x2, 2x4, a gypsum wall board on metal stud. So let's start by using here the default, which is a 2x4, and you can go ahead and click in that first room and you'll have the grid. The other way to place a ceiling is in the ceiling option to pick sketch ceiling. When you pick sketch ceiling, you have a lot of flexibility here. You can use several draw tools to create your own ceiling structure. So what I'll do here is I'll use the rectangle command to create a shape that's inside here, this space, and then I can change the ceiling grid. Let's change it to 2x2 and then pick the green check mark, and you'll see that you've created here a ceiling that's 2x2 inside the space. If with it highlighted, we can change the height in properties from 8 feet to 8'6" and apply, so that now it's actually going to be a little bit higher. And now we can create the rest as a gypsum wallboard by picking here ceiling. We can pick sketch ceiling, and then we'll pick the pick walls tool. And when you pick these walls, the line extends. In fact, that one actually, I'm going to do an undo. I want to make sure that I'm getting the inside wall, so I can pick that one and move it over just by dragging and dropping it over. In the modify panel, you can use this trim extend to corner. It's sort of like a fillet with a radius of 0 in AutoCAD, but you don't have to establish anything. You can click here and here. You see it trims it here and here, here and here and here and here, so that you know that you have just the outside. But what I could have done is used here a rectangle, and that's what I'll do for this inner space. So I'll click on rectangle and click here and here. So now what I have is I have this sketch of a rectangle that's on the walls on the inside face, and I have one that's going to be around here, this 2x2 grid, and I'm going to change that now to gypsum wall board. Gypsum wall board on metal studs. And if I pick the green check mark, you'll see that it's established. The only thing is, I'll go ahead and escape that. Out of that, the gypsum wall board by default doesn't show any kind of sand finish or concrete finish. So what we can do is rest your pointer here along one of these walls and use the tab key until you get to that ceiling. When you click, you should see that it highlights that gypsum wall board right here, ceiling. You can go ahead and pick edit type, and in edit type, pick under structure this edit button. And now these are the layers that make up that gypsum wall board. The finish is what we want to change. Gypsum wall board here, click on that gypsum wall board right here on the right hand side, and you'll see that in the material browser you may also get another dialog box. You have it here. If you double click on this gypsum wall board material in the material browser, you'll now have this material editor, which is the actual ceiling. And so what we want to change is the surface pattern. So under surface pattern, click on pattern none. If you have an earlier version of Revit, you will see right away that there is here a surface pattern that you can change to concrete. I'll go ahead and pick OK and then done, and pick OK several times here to get back to the drawing and see when I click in space that that ceiling does have this kind of sand concrete finish now. We could have actually used the sand material also. You can select your ceiling grid and move it. So if you wanted to move it over by, let's say, 1 foot, I'll pick the move tool here. I can click one of these grids, pull my mouse to the right, type in 1 and enter, and you see how the whole grid will shift over 1 foot if you're trying to center it. In architectural design, we do like to make sure that we don't have any thin slivers of ceiling, and sometimes it's better not to have it the grid right up against this wall, because rooms aren't always exactly square. So we do sometimes shift the ceiling so that it has a little bit of space on each side, depending on the room itself. We can also rotate it. So if I select the grid, I can pick rotate, and then pick here a point, pull my mouse around and pick an angle or type in an angle. I'll just go ahead and click an angle, and now I've got it rotated. So there is a lot of design here, flexibility in your ceiling layout. We can also create a ceiling that's sloped. Let's go ahead and start the ceiling tool and then sketch ceiling. We can draw a rectangle around the inside face of this room and then pick slope arrow. This is similar to the slope arrow on a roof. We can click here at the far left side and you'll see the arrow here. We can then click at the far right side. We could have established the offset, the height offset at the tail in the options bar there if we wanted it to be different. By default in properties it shows that the height offset at the tail is 1 foot and at the head it's 0. Let's change here the height offset at the tail to 2 feet and pick apply. And so now you have a slope that will slope 2 feet from head to tail. I'll go ahead and click the green check mark to finish this slope. We can also load several families of light fixtures and mechanical symbols. We can go to Insert tab and click on Load Families. Here we can go to the lighting families under Architectural and Internal to find the recessed lights if we'd like to use those. Hold your control key down to select here the downlight recessed cans. One of these troffer lights, you can hold your control key down and select the 2x2 if you'd like. Go ahead and pick open. And now they're loaded into the drawing. If we pick the load family button again, under specialty equipment, we can find fire protection, like a smoke detector is in here, if you'd like to use that as a symbol. We also have the exit signs. Under mechanical, folder. And architectural, we have in the air side components and the air terminals, the HVAC supply and return. There are several other lighting fixtures that you can load and several online that you can get for free from places like revitcity.com or the Autodesk, AutoSeek. And if you'd like to use here the annotation for the ceiling under US Imperial Annotations, you can go to architectural and find all of the different tags that are possibly not loaded. When you pick in your drawing to tag an element, it might say that it's not loaded and it will load it for you automatically. We can here load the ceiling tag with height. Right now, we can go ahead and pick open. Okay. In the annotation tab, you can see tag by category. And if we clicked on here one of these ceiling elements, it would tell us that it wasn't loaded, but since we have it loaded, we can just go ahead and click on it, and there it is, a tag that shows you what type of ceiling it is, along with here the height. So this one's going to have a little bit different height. We can highlight it and kind of drag it off or in to the drawing, depending on where you want that text. And now in the architecture tab, we can go to component, place a component, and pick up some of the light fixtures that we loaded, like this 2x2 light fixture that we can bring into our grid. When you place your lights, make sure that you get close enough to position the light within the grid. Some lights are created to snap to the grid and others to be placed on the face. Sometimes we can open up those families and change them so that they can snap to the grid. So do the best you can to get these close to the grid, and then you can rotate your fixture into place and establish here different ceiling layouts based on sketching and changing material. This last one here, I actually placed it as a grid, and then in this type properties, I picked edit type. I duplicated the 2x4 acoustic ceiling tile and called it custom. Then I picked on the edit button next to structure, and I picked here for the finish, changing it from the acoustical ceiling to a different type of material like oak flooring. So for the oak flooring, there was a surface pattern. Here I can double click of this 3-inch parallel that I could establish for my ceiling in those rare cases when we actually have a wood ceiling, like the Affleck house. Let's go ahead and pick cancel or OK on these. You can experiment with different ceiling layouts and place a few fixtures here for your reference. One that is based on these different ways that we place the ceilings. When you go to the 3D view, you will see your different ceiling layouts, and in some cases the back side of the light fixtures. So I can hold my shift key down, press the wheel of my mouse, and come around to the bottom and take a look at these light fixtures here that are actually on the ceiling on the side. But here, showing the back side, and there's that sloped ceiling. Another thing that determines your ceiling and how much is viewed would be here in the level 1, the view range, which is like the view range for the floor. Only so much of that cut plane here is based on here how far it is from level 2. If you don't see your ceiling, you can come into the view range and change this cut plane. Okay, have fun creating your different ceiling layouts.